Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with a hot take. And this is your Antifa update. There's so much stuff going on out west with the Antifa rioting. What, Joan? I can't pet you. Here, just come over here. Just come over here. Ugh, you painted it. But, yeah, I see you. All right, I'll pet you. There's so much going on with Antifa. I'm on a deadline and I can't cover it all. I honestly don't even have the time to watch my videos. But let's take a look at this article because I think it's very relevant. Portland NAACP chief calls protest a largely white spectacle. Gonna call him a racist? I don't think you will. Let's read it. The NAACP's leader in Portland is describing his city's 2 months of nightly protests as largely a white spectacle caused by Antifa and other left-wing activists that has co-opted the Black Lives Matter movement. Called it. The Reverend E.D. Mondane, in an op-ed for the Washington Post, of all places, hit hard on what he calls privileged white Americans with their own agendas and pleads for immediate refocusing on the true reasons for the demonstrations and end to racial injustice and inequality. And this is where Antifa goes under the bus. Americans took to the streets after the police killing of George Floyd in what Mondane described as a nationwide reckoning with the original and savage crime of slavery. What? It was for the police quelling. Okay. That monstrous crime has finally caught up with us as a nation. I don't see what that has to do with slavery, but I do not believe it is a time for spectacle, he writes. I don't know why you had the time. See, you already won the argument. You only have to present it, and you have to go down the rabbit hole. Well, 400 years of slavery. Unfortunately, spectacle is how the best way to describe Portland's protests. They're not protests, they're riots. Vandalizing government buildings and hurling projectiles at law enforcement draw attention. But how do these actions stop police from killing black people, he writes? Well, good point. Good point. What are Antifa and other leftist agitators achieving for the cause of black equality? Nothing. That was the point. They're not interested in that. They want to tear down the state. And then they get to rebuild it and tell you where you belong in their wacky hierarchy of intersectional feminism. Mondane criticizes the Trump administration for sending federal troops to Portland and counter what he's called mostly white anarchists. Friday night, roughly 4,000 demonstrators, that's slightly more accurate, yelled, "Feds go home" and "Black Lives Matter." Later, federal agents tried to break up the protesters. Again, they're not protesters after they set off fireworks. Protesters don't set off fireworks. Rioters set off fireworks. Agitators set off fireworks. Criminals set off fireworks. There is more at stake here than who appears most often on nightly TV broadcast, he writes. Right now there are unmarked, unnamed federal forces, not true, kidnapping our citizens off the street without justification or authority. Not true. Again, you got to make up your mind here. You can't burn down a federal building. Someone has to show up when somebody attacks a federal building. Do you want nobody to show up at the federal building? You could be on jury duty. You could be sitting there, mind your own business, and a group of thugs attack the courthouse. Do you think no one will show up? Continuing, ultimately, Mondane thanks, quote, our white brothers and sisters for their support, but asks them to consider whether their actions are to, quote, further the cause of justice or, quote, simply for show. Quote, is this another example of white co-optation? He asks. Oh, I guess that's it. Well, you had me at some of that. I mean, I'm glad you're calling it out. Just seems you're calling it out because it's white, not really calling it out because it's dangerous. What happened to calling for peace? Not really seeing that here. Yeah, I mean, you kind of do here when you say vandalizing government buildings and hurling projectiles at law enforcement draw attention. But how do these actions stop police from killing black people? Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty accurate but kind of weak assessment now that I think about it. I mean, you really got to call this stuff out. You know, I've said from the beginning, if you don't call this out, you're going to own it. Okay? And Black Lives Matter is going to own all this. They're going to own Antifa's antics, their own people's antics, the antics from the Democrats. All this stuff is going to be dropped on the doorstep of Black Lives Matter. The Democrats, they'll all deny it. They'll all go, "Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know were we getting money from Black Lives Matter? I wasn't." That'll be the Democrats' reaction. Antifa, all those guys are going to jail, so they don't really matter. They're going to be left, you holding the bag, Black Lives Matter, and the movement will be ruined, and you'll have to trash it and start over again. That's my prediction. So, I mean, I guess this is a start, calling out the spectacle of it. But, you know, when people are getting hurt, and now people are getting hurt and killed, I think you got to call it more than just a spectacle.